been doing I just realized something. Yep, this is actually Sermon 7. Oh, man, I changed that everywhere else except this one slide. Sermon 7. Boy, it seems like forever, hadn't it? Because we had the holidays in between and everything. It seems like this time of this church going through sin is being prolonged, right? That's right. But we're still in sin. It should be Sermon 7 there. Sorry about that. But remember this. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Certainly not. Come on, get with the program, Jerry. Certainly not. Just kidding. I'm picking. Certainly not. That is what we're talking about. You know, God's grace covers every sin. God's grace will save us. He will cleanse us. He will make us right. But that does not make an excuse for us then to go and do anything we want to. Because once we are His child, He has forgiven us. We are part of His family. We've entered into that relationship as His child. So from that point on, we determine in ourselves that we want to do what is good and what is right to honor His name, which is now stamped on us. Because how shall we who die to sin live any longer in it, right? All right, our next slide there. And then he says there at the beginning of this chapter, before the Ten Commandments, he says, I am the Lord. He has the authority. He is the one that says what is right and what is wrong. It is not your opinion. It's no one else's opinion. It's not your experience. It's nothing else. He determines what is right and wrong. It is not even your need. Sadly, I had a pastor friend years ago. He passed away now, but I was doing youth ministry, and he came in and he was listening to a lesson that I was teaching, and he stopped and he said, well, let me tell you about this. He says, is stealing always sin? And all the kids went, yeah, and I went, yeah, it is. He said, oh, but listen to this. He said, but what if your family's starving? And that apple's there. Would you steal it for your family? Y'all, he was wrong. Stealing is wrong regardless of the reason that you do it. Now, would you steal it for your family? Many of you would say, yes, I would for my family. But that does not mean that it's not sin. It just means that you would choose to do that over what God has said. You know, sin is determined by God. Why? Because He is the creator. He is the authority. He determines what is and what is good and what is bad. He says, I am the Lord your God, and we follow Him. He does not force us. He has not come down with a cosmic gun and stuck it to your head. We choose to follow Him. Why? Because we know who He is. We know His intentions are best. We know that everything that He does, even the things that we don't particularly like, we know that He does those things because ultimately they are for our good. Not His own selfishness, but for our good, right? Don't we know that? So we choose to follow Him. So He has the authority, and we have made that covenant, so we submit. And He said, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. He is the one that has delivered us from the very gates of hell itself. The only way, the only truth, the only life. He has provided a way. So now we are His. Now, it has been said, and we preached it before, that, understand in a certain sense, the Old Testament law is not applicable to the New Testament Christian as far as it sending you to hell. Because if you've accepted Jesus Christ your Savior, heaven is secured. But the Old Testament law gives us wisdom on many things, right? Including these 10 commandments on what is good and what is evil. All right, so let's look at today's. Let's look at today's passage. Y'all like my little cartoons there? Exodus 20:15 through 16. You shall not steal. Now I went on, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. And we're actually going to focus on that more next week. But I tell you, I got to starting on the first one, and it was just too much, and I didn't want y'all here till 2 o'clock this afternoon. So we just cut it in half, and we're going to do the stealing part. So just look at the guy stealing the money over there and forget Pinocchio for this week, okay? But you shall not steal. You shall not steal. Now, what are the reasons that we listen to him? What are the reasons that we choose not to steal? Well, click our slide there. One reason, he said, is in Leviticus 19:11 through 12. Or one reason is, he says, you shall not steal, nor deal falsely, nor lie to one another, and you shall not swear by my name falsely, nor shall you profane the name of your God. Why? Just because it just doesn't seem right, or there's a standard. Y'all understand that in society, there's a standard. We shouldn't do these things because we need to live together in a society, and is that what it says? In sociology classes that I took, that's what they said. Morality with any group has to do with social norms. Well, that might be in some cases, but there is a reason that we choose to accept what we're talking about today, specifically stealing, that we choose to accept that as wrong. And it's right there in that last line. Let's read it together. Ready? I am the Lord. Not me, he says, right? Why is stealing wrong? Well, you can't tell me stealing's wrong. Y'all know today this is crazy because people are out there running into stores, grabbing stuff and going out, putting people out of business because they're stealing from them. And what do the leaders say about that? Go ahead. You know, they have needs, whatever else. And there's reasons why they do that, so don't be so hard on them. Stealing is wrong. How do I know that? Because he is the Lord. And he said so. It really is that simple. One reason we choose not to steal is because he said not to. It's that simple. Whatever your circumstances are, it's still evil. It's still wrong because he has said so. Now you say, well, but what about that case? What about if my family's starving? Now I'm probably going to steal for it. Well, you probably will. But that doesn't mean that it's not sin. It just simply means that you choose to do it. And you say, well, that doesn't seem right. Well, I'll tell you what's not right. What's not right is that God created a world that was full of all kinds of everything you could imagine that you would need and want in life. But we as human beings chose to sin, chose to corrupt, bring a curse upon this world, and that is the only reason that we're in this circumstance where we would have to steal for our family, because of the sin we brought into the world. It is not God who brings these circumstances into our lives, these evil circumstances. It is we who brought it in because of our choices of sin, right? So why do I not steal? Because he said so. Another reason. Well, one is that we weren't made for that. We were made to love. Listen to this in Romans 13:9 through 10. For the commandments, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, are all summed up in this saying, namely, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does not harm a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law. So one reason we don't steal is because God just simply said so. Number two is because if I am his and he is changing me and I am becoming one of his children, I am becoming what he created me to be, the center of that is relationship. The center of that is love. And how can I go because of my circumstances and take and put someone else in a bad circumstance for my own gain? How could I do that if I loved somebody? You know, as Christians, the center of who we are is love. To many people that sounds bad because much of the world believes that we're just a house full of haters. They hate these people and hate those people. My friends, we talked in Sunday school this morning about the difference between what's in God's Word and what's a saying that everybody thinks is in God's Word, right? And one of the things that is not in God's Word is hate the sin but love the sinner. Y'all have heard that before? Now, that's not necessarily in God's Word, but I believe that if you study God's Word, you will find that truth. You will find that even though this person is in this situation, is doing these things, that has involved themselves and made those choices to be there, even though all of that, God Himself sent His Son, that while they were yet sinners, while you were yet a sinner, He died for them. And that is the center of who we should be. Not taking for our own benefit from others, but really just the opposite. What do I have that I can give to help? Last reason I got here on this page is I believe that if you do that, that God will be against you. Proverbs 20:17 says this, just one of those little proverbs, one of those little lines. It says, bread gained by deceit is sweet to a man, but afterwards his mouth will be filled with gravel. Now, there is a difference between how God treats the world, those who do not know Him, and His children. And you would say, that's right, He treats us better. Well, you're right in some ways. But you know something? If I look down there and my kid is acting up, I might just stop the service and say, Ethan, Joshua, Carly, whatever, straighten up. Embarrass them right there. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it? But do you think I would do that to one of your kids? Probably not. I might speak to you after. But because, why? Because they're my kids. Would I see your kid acting up out here in the parking lot and go up and give them a big whop on the behind and tell them they better quit that and get on? No. Would I do that to my kids? Yeah, probably. Is there a difference between how a father treats his children than he does others who are not his? Yes. So understand that I believe that if we choose to steal, if we choose to gain wrongly, I believe that God Himself will take it and turn it into gravel in your mouth. I believe He will not allow you to gain if you're choosing to gain through your own power in a way that is wrong. Plain and simple. Now, we talked about, when we first started talking about the Ten Commandments as a whole, we mentioned that out of the 10, 9 of them are mentioned in the New Testament. And we're seeing here that we've already seen some in the New Testament here. But 9 of them are mentioned in the New Testament. One is not. What is the one that is not recounted in the New Testament? What's the one commandment? You remember? My wife knows. The Sabbath, right? We had a sermon on that. If you didn't get that sermon, go back and listen to it. They have it. The sound booth has them back there, has the CDs and things. But go back and listen to that one. That's the only one that is not repeated in the New Testament, okay? And you can go back and see the sermon about that. But this is definitely repeated in the New Testament. Let's see that next slide there. In fact, there's several places, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, that we find this idea that stealing is wrong. Old Testament, Exodus 22:7, Leviticus 19:13, Proverbs 10:2, Psalm 62:10, Leviticus 6:2-4. Then in the New Testament, Ephesians 4:28, 1 Corinthians 6:9-10, 1 Timothy 6:10, Luke 19:8, Romans 13:7. And that's actually not even all of them. I just ran out of room. But there's plenty of places both in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So any argument, any misunderstanding that, well, that's the Old Testament law. Today we live in freedom. Right? No. Even in the New Testament, it's said again, you should not steal. It is wrong. It is not good. Let's look at just a couple of these scriptures here in our next slide. And let's see if those things in the Old Testament kind of match up to what the New Testament says. Proverbs 10:2 says this, treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivers from death. What is that saying? The treasures, the things that you can get and gain in this world through treachery, through wickedness, those things, they're not going to profit you anything. But it is only righteousness, doing what is good and what is right before your God and before the people around you. It is only righteousness that delivers you from death. It is only by righteousness that we are saved. Through our own righteousness? No. We're New Testament Christians. We know it is the righteousness of Christ, right? That He paid that debt and made us righteous. But let's see if in 1 Corinthians, if it says something similar, if it matches up, if it's the same idea. It says there in 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10, do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. No, and then it goes on listing a bunch of things, but I kind of focused on that. Nor thieves will inherit the kingdom of God. You'll say, oh no, what does that mean? I want to contradict one real quick teaching here. The idea, I agree. When you're talking to somebody and you're telling them about, that we are all sins, and it's great. I love these guys that go out and they'll ask somebody, well, have you ever stolen? Well, yeah, I stole a pen from work. I stole this. Well, what does that make you? Well, I guess a thief, right? They say, and that's very true. That's very true, okay? But I want you to understand something. As a Christian, salvation secures heaven. We're going to talk about in a few weeks, we're going to talk about the security of salvation. How do we know that we're saved? Are we once saved, always saved? The answer to that is yes. But we're going to preach on that, okay? I'm going to preach on that. But heaven is secure, so it is not the idea that if we do these things that we won't go to heaven. But what is it saying here? If this person truly is a thief. Well, in these days, I don't want you to raise hands, but think to yourself, how many in here have ever stolen anything? Anything at all. I mean, little, big, whatever. Okay? I remember the first time, Mama, I got to confess to you. It was Bethel Grocery down the road from the house, which really, in the worldly fashion, I can blame Mom and them, but they bought me this little airplane thing, and it would fly if you blew up a balloon and you clipped it on there and you let it go and the little airplane would fly. So it was Mama's fault because she didn't get me a balloon. And I walked into Bethel Grocery and there was a balloon, and I took it. Lord has forgiven me for that. But all of us have stolen something at some point. But does that really mean as a whole we are a thief? We may have been a thief at that time, but there's forgiveness beyond that. To be honest with you, I feel the same way about some of the ideas within, like, some of the substance abuse community where they say, I'm an alcoholic, I'll always be. No, I don't think so. I'll be honest with you. Once you move to a certain point and you have, through the Holy Spirit, I think is the only way, gotten to a place to where that stuff is pushed aside, the temptations start to come aside, all of that, I don't believe you're no more an alcoholic. I believe that there's temptation in your life as anyone else, but I would not say you're an alcoholic. It's the same way here. It's talking here about people who choose certain lifestyles. They choose to do these things as a continuous part of their life. And for those, they will not inherit the kingdom of God. So does the Old Testament saying that those that try to profit through wickedness or do their own things, that they're going to receive death and it's only the righteous that live? And then this idea in 1 Corinthians, do they match up? Is God the same in the Old Testament and the New Testament? Yes, He is. Psalm 62:10, do not trust in oppression, nor vainly hope in robbery. If riches increase, do not set your heart on them. 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Do those two match? Is the idea the same? Y'all have heard me stay up here, many a time. Any month now, that Publishers Clearinghouse van's going to pull up to my door, right? And I'm going to get it. I still hope that happens one day, even though I don't really fill out Publishers Clearinghouse stuff. But I'm just trusting maybe that'll happen one day. Some of you rely on the lottery. Some of you put your hope in many other things. But even if you receive, some of you are pretty stable financially. Some of you don't really have to worry much about money. You're kind of secure. You're set. Let me tell you something. If you put your heart in that, If all of your security is placed in that you've put back a nice nest egg, your house is paid off, you have everything you need, and you're good to go. If you put all of your heart into that, my friends, you will never find true peace. Those things come and those things go. Remember what he said? He said, don't put your trust in things that rust, right? Things that fade away, things that go away. At any point, someone could come in and our national banking system could collapse. And where's all that money in your bank then? At some point, someone could come into your house while you're not there. You're at church Sunday morning, and they're sneaking in your house, and they go in and they get all that gold and silver that you've been putting up, because that's where the solid investment is in gold and silver these days. I hear that on the TV all the time. But anyways, they go in there and they get all that gold and silver that you got in your safe there hidden behind the picture, and they take it. And then where are you? My friends, if your peace is in what you can gain or what you have, you will not have true peace, because those things come and those things will go. And in fact, it says, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. I think of, every one of you will think of somebody in your mind, but think in the last several years of famous, wealthy people that seem to have it all together. And then what? Suicide, accidental death, murder. Circumstances come and they take from them. And all of that stuff that they had means nothing anymore. Whether they gained it from good or ill, it means nothing anymore. It wasn't long ago, and he wasn't the greatest fellow as far as morals and stuff, but I loved Robin Williams and some of his movies and things. He's just funny. But did all of that fame, all of that money, did it give him peace? No. No. God is the one who can make a way. God is the one that can give us peace. All right. So what if you have stolen? Our next slide there. So let's say you've stolen in the past. Let's say that God convicts you that something is going on and that you have stolen. Go ahead and click that next slide there. So what if you've stolen? Let's see what the Bible says. What can we do from here? First of all, Ephesians 4:8, it starts out by saying, let him who stole steal no more. One of my favorite skits I ever saw, I don't even know where it was. For years ago, I can't remember. They set up, and this person was coming into this psychologist, and the psychologist was sitting there, his legs were crossed, and he had a pipe in there, and he was writing down notes and all. And the guy was going on about this and how he kept doing this, and he was struggling with this and this, that, and the other. And finally he gets to the end, he says, well, do you have any advice for me? Well, the psychologist takes his pipe out, and he thinks a minute. He uncrosses his legs and leans forward, and he says, yeah, I think I know what you need. What you need is to just stop it! Stop it! And he just starts screaming at him. Sorry, I scared some of you. But he just starts screaming at the guy, just stop it! Quit being stupid! Stop it! And that's the feeling I get here. If you're in something, first step is just simply stop it. Get out of that situation. Stop doing it. But then it gives us another thing. Stop it. But then I think this next part of it gives us an idea of the then going the opposite direction. Remember the idea of repentance, completely changing mind and direction and everything and going a different way? So it says, let him who stole steal no longer. Stop it there. But rather, turning around, facing the other way, but rather let him labor, working with his hands what is good, that he may have something to give him who has need. Not laboring to gain for myself, not laboring to gain the big house and the nice boat and the fancy truck and everything else that we want. It's not the issue of gaining again for me. It is that I turn around completely, I leave myself and my wants in the past, and I work hard to provide for those that I'm responsible. First, of course, my family. And then beyond that, maybe those that I come across every day that are in need, right? So I stop And then I turn around and I do the complete opposite thing and begin to stop living for myself and begin living for others. Luke 19:8. Y'all remember this? Y'all remember Zacchaeus, right? Zacchaeus was a wee little man was he. He climbed up in the sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. But as the Savior passed that way, he looked up in the tree and he said, Zacchaeus, you come down, for I'm going to your house today. Y'all remember that song? Some of you do, some of you don't. If you don't know it, stay after, and Miss Linda will sing it to you and teach you. So it's a good song. It's a great song. But Zacchaeus, he was a short guy. The Lord was coming through. Zacchaeus was a tax collector. He was a sinner. He was not a good guy. He turned against his own people. He cheated people out of their money. All of these things. But the Lord said, I'm going to your house, Zacchaeus. So they go to his house. The Lord loves him. The Lord shares His word with him, all of these things. But there are people all gathered around the house looking in, and they're saying, why is he with Zacchaeus? You know what kind of man he is. He's terrible. Zacchaeus knows that. He knows exactly who he is. So then listen to this in verse 8. Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore it fourfold. He realized what he had done, and then he chose to make it right. Romans 13:7. Render therefore to all their due. Now, be careful with this one. Some of you won't like this one, okay? Taxes, to whom taxes are due. Customs, to whom customs. Fear, to whom fear. And honor, to whom honor. A person came to Jesus and said, hey, are we supposed to be paying these taxes? And what did Jesus say? He said, look on there on the coin. Whose image is that? Well, it's Caesar's image. Well, give unto Caesar what is Caesar, but give unto the Lord what is the Lord's, right? Notice that here. Give the taxes to who they're due to. Customs to whom customs are due. That means there are times that we have to honor even those that we may not want to. Fear to whom fear. Which, to be honest with you, I think we need to fear the Lord most often. And honor to whom honor. You can click that last one. You know, at the center of all of this idea that we should steal, is that we don't have what we think we need or want. You know, we've worked our whole life and it seems like I got nothing and I deserve more because of all. It's all about me. How many times in that conversation will you hear, I, me, I deserve, I want, I should, I have, hey, me. But why are we here? The New Testament church, there is one and one reason only that we exist on this earth as it is. One and one reason only that we exist here now. Who can tell me what that reason is? Say again? Good, but in what fashion, in what way? What is the number one thing he said? Say again? Spread the gospel. That's right. It's the only reason we're here. You know, we look at it and we say, okay, 80 years. We got 80 years here. 90 years, 100 years, something like that. We got that here. Boy, that's a long time. We better get ourselves comfortable. We better make ourselves comfortable here because we're going to be here a long time. But my friend, beyond that is eternity. And what? From God's perspective, He looks down and He says, all right, don't worry, I'm not going to keep you there very long, maybe 80, 90, 100 years or so, somewhere in there. But I just need you to go down there and tell as many people, as many as you can, about my love, about how they can then get to heaven. That is the only reason we're here. My friends, if we were not to go and share the gospel out in the world, if that was not our commission and what we should do, then our Father who loves us would reach down and grab us and take us to Himself right now. So my friend, you have chosen to say, I am a Christian. In that choice, what you're committing to is to live your life in accordance with what He has said your life is about. And He has said your life is about serving them out there, giving them the gospel, loving them, housing them, clothing them, feeding them, teaching them, discipling them, all of these things. He says your life is about out there, is about others, not about yourself. But how many of us get all upset because, well, so-and-so has a nice house, and this one has a nice truck, and all this. And I worked hard my whole life. Me too. I got my first job when I was 13, and I worked pretty much after that. If it wasn't a steady job, it was one of those jobs where Daddy said, oh, you need help? Well, I got a son. You ain't even got to pay him. He'll come help you, right? Clean chicken houses, work in the field, run hay, whatever I got to do. That was always fun. But I always had something going on. I worked hard. But sadly, I don't have a house. I do have a nice car now. Y'all like that? It's a good car. But the Lord kind of had to do circumstances to get that for me. But it worked out good. But I don't have a whole lot. I don't have a lot in the bank account. I don't have a house. I don't have a fancy truck or a boat. I don't have a cabin. I kind of forced, here lately, to be honest with you, I made sure that I have a couple of guns. You can think what you want about that, but I think in many cases that's necessary these days to protect my family. But not much. But you know something? That's okay. That's okay. Because this life is not about me. God says, my life, my short little thing that's here is about them, not me. And that's why I will not steal. He said so. He's grown in me a love for people, given me a commission, and there's no way I can live that and go to someone and take what they have. There's no way. If you would stand to your feet, Miss Kathy and Miss Laurie, if y'all would come up maybe well, she's not with us today, but come on up and let's sing our invitation. The altars will be open this morning. Whatever you might want to talk to the Lord about, I'm here if you need to talk to me, if you want somebody to pray for you. But my friends, real quick before we sing, I want to throw this out there because this is where y'all are going to say, well, there goes the preacher. My friends, I love you. But many of us are saying, oh, I got this because I don't steal from nobody. But yet you come into God's house and you do not return to Him what is His. Y'all, the commission of North Fork Baptist Church is to go into the entire world preaching the gospel, discipling those whom we can bring in, and going out again and preaching the gospel. And God has placed a way for that to occur in the church. And that way is that we bring our tithes into the storehouse. Then that money goes to turn on lights and sound systems and a piano that she can play and all these other kind of things to pay the preacher's salary. Oh, hey. All of those things. But it also goes, boy, we've been discussing Sunday school because for a long time we haven't had a bill for Sunday school because we really haven't had much and all of this. But now we've got all new curriculum. It's been hundreds of dollars. It's been things that were but necessary, needed, so that our children can be discipled and can grow. And my friends, we cannot do that if God's people will not follow His plan and bring that. And essentially, I felt it. Essentially, what we are doing is stealing from the hand of God. So whether we have run into a store and snatched something and ran out, went inside, ate a good meal and dashed out, went into someone's house at night and broke open the safe and got what was there, or just kept to ourselves the things that God said He has given you to serve others. Whether we've done any of that, we have stolen.